It's 6:15 in the morning, January the 5th, in Melbourne, Australia at sunrise. The cruise starts in Melbourne, Australia. It's January in Melbourne, so we would expect a Christmas tree at the Sofitel Hotel. The Sofitel Hotel itself is just stunning. Open air atrium. Looking at the Yarra River, which flows through Melbourne, soon we will be heading out to the dock to board our cruise ship, the Crystal Symphony, for a 15-day cruise from Melbourne to Sydney, Australia, along the coast of New Zealand. Boarding the ship is always a bit of a zoo. Check and see if your bags are going to go on board into the cruise terminal. And for this ship, we have a huge check-in line. In an extremely slow check-in, over 2 hours, and finally arriving where we get our cruise ID and room keys. Friday, 6 January, day 2 of the cruise, Melbourne, Australia still, and we're off on a tram tour of the city. And this is the old Melbourne Stock Exchange. Yet another bank interior. The gold rush in Melbourne made this the third wealthiest city in the world in the 1850s. That brings an end to the first port stop on our 15-day cruise, 2 days at sea, and then Milford Sound in New Zealand. Days at sea. Let's see what a typical day at sea aboard the Crystal Symphony really looks like. There are 2 decks where the activities take place. The first is deck 11, the Lido deck. Breakfast and lunch in the Lido. One can eat inside or outside. Beautiful views. The obligatory quick review of foods available at breakfast. Pancakes, Japanese food, traditional American fare, oatmeal, beans, eggs made to order, cold cuts, especially my favorites, and a good selection of fruits. In sum, there are some 222 individual items on the buffet. Just outside of the Lido buffet is a very pleasant alternate area to have lunch under a closing and opening roof. There's a bar area, and all the liquor on the ship is free, so you can have anything you want right here. Then there's an ice cream and waffles, and every day they have different flavors of ice cream. Walking further towards the bow, one comes to the pool, 5 foot 8 inches, and the jacuzzi. And all the way to the bow of the ship is the Palm Court. Another great place to sit and read. 2 ways to move between decks 11 and 5, which is where the elevators mainly go. First is to take the fat box. And the second is to do the weight reduction way to walk between decks. The second main deck, where all the activities at Sea Days are held, especially the lectures and classes, is deck 6. This is where the casino is located, as well as the Galaxy Theater, where the cooking class will be. This is the guest chef, George Scott.
Well, almost. Jeff Scott from New Zealand.
Oh, it's that strange spelling. Where do you work in New Zealand, Jeff?
Well, I'm now a freelance and consultant chef, but I had a restaurant, my own restaurant called Vinny's in Auckland.
His time as the private Secret Service agent for Jacqueline Kennedy.
Must have done something wrong. We're about to get fired. Finally, about 90 minutes of that, they came and said, we made a decision. You're being assigned to Mrs. John F. Kennedy.
And how did you feel about that?
I was devastated, angered. I felt like this is not what I wanted to do. I wanted to be where the action was because I knew what the agents did with Vess Truman and many others. Eisenhower. Fashion shows, tea parties, canasta games. That wasn't my cup of tea, so I wanted to get out of there as soon as I could.
When you first met Mrs. Kennedy, this was in November of 1960, and she was pregnant.
She was very pregnant. I went to meet her. She didn't want me there. I didn't want to be there. It was a pretty good relationship.
Before, I was one of the 2 crew members who were trained to use a spacesuit. On every shuttle flight, we had to have that capability just in case something happened, but we weren't planning to do a spacewalk.
The lunch buffet only has 60 items to choose from. Bistro, where you get hamburgers and hot dogs and french fries. And the best place for lattes is the bistro. An alternate location for snacks. And here is the view of the buffet all set up from above.
Now it seems to me some fine things have been laid upon your table, but you only want the ones that you can't describe.
And I'm very impressed that you've deserted the sun-drenched promenade deck and the after decks to join me in the Starlight Lounge. Thank you for coming. Such an important and unique destination, described, as Brian mentioned, by the Victorian British poet and Nobel laureate Rudyard Kipling as the 8th wonder of the world.
This is where the computer classes are held with Chip. The best way to go around the ship is on the Deck 7 promenade deck. 0.27 miles around, 3.7 laps equals a mile. Days at sea continue with dinner for seating 6 p.m. After dinner, we pass by the violin player and the piano player on our way to a violin show. We are now in Milford Sound. This is the Stirling Falls, taller than Niagara Falls. The mountains rise some 4,000 feet. This is Mitre Mountain, the tallest mountain in Milford Sound. And now we are opposite the town of Milford Sound, the end of the Milford Track, and right next to this giant waterfall. Tuesday morning, 6:30, just around sunrise, 50 degrees. The ship's crew is getting ready to lower a tender. Looking at the sun breaking through the clouds, the days today is about 16 hours in length. What else can I say about this southernmost island in the New Zealand chain? There's where we're going to be hiking to, Acres Point. There's the tender boat, and it is really rough and rocking out there. We have arrived at the southernmost island in the New Zealand chain, Stewart Island, thriving town of Oban, named after some Scottish explorer, 380 people. And in the haze is our ship, far, far out. I am on a 5-person Acres Point, about 3/4 of a mile hike. It rains for over 200 days a year in Stewart Island, and we have a sunny day. A lovely day. And this is Acres Point. Looking back towards the entranceway to town.
This is Puheri Taiko. It's got a couple of uses. The first one, you can write on this side and stick a stamp to it, send it in the mail. But its other use is as toilet paper. So pick a big leaf and use the underside.
City of Oban in Stewart Island has one hotel. And that concludes our Acres Point walk. Wednesday, January the 11th, we approached the entrance to the river leading to Dunedin, New Zealand. Next stop, Port Chalmers, where we will be docking. So this is the first place that greets you in Port Chalmers.
They're easy to spread.
This is the
you can cut them in half.
Dunedin Botanic Garden, founded 1863. Very pretty, very hilly. Typical Dunedin street. We are standing above the city of Dunedin. City of 120,000. Scottish city, founded in the gold rush in the early 1800s. One of the interesting sights in Dunedin is going up the world's steepest street. These girls are running up the world's steepest street, which doesn't look all that steep. Every foot forward is 3 feet up. Next up on our Dunedin sightseeing tour is the train station, built in 1908. A beautiful, beautiful style both on the outside. Now we go into the rail station with hordes of other tourists and a beautiful, beautiful building. The walls are Royal Dalton tile and stained glass windows up on the second floor. From one end to the other, it's the longest train platform in the southern hemisphere. Typical New Zealand roads. Okay, this is a much more typical New Zealand road here. Our tour concludes with a overview of the cruise ship at Port Chalmers. And there's the view of the port from the lookout point. There's the steeple of the church that's visible and Port Chalmers.
Here on the left.
Well, we are at
You're on the nature
Akaroa.
cruise, just halfway down the...
Akaroa is a tender port. It's about a 15-minute tender ride. Akaroa was founded by the French, and there are a lot of French flags floating around the town. Looking across the bay, and it is very, very pleasant here. Not a whole lot to do in Akaroa. Very scenic, pleasant. Few stores, a grocery store, a bank. Approaching the ship. This is our room stewardess. Who are you?
My name is Eva.
And where are you from, Eva?
I come from Croatia.
And how is our room to serve?
It's perfect.
We don't create too much of a mess?
No, definitely not.
Now we're gonna look at a deluxe stateroom with large picture window, cabin number 7112. The cabin itself is 205 square feet, cozy, but still very serviceable. Nice double bed. Little sofa and table to sit at. Refrigerator and safe. There's just one 110 plug and one 220 plug. The windows are up from the promenade deck and no one can see inside the window, so it's never necessary to keep your curtains closed. In summary, this cozy cabin has lots of nooks and crannies to store clothing and other items. I recommend the cabin. Friday the 13th finds us in the capital city of New Zealand, Wellington. Saturday morning, 14 January, 60 odd degrees, finds us sailing towards the town of Napier. Napier is the Art Deco capital of the world. Typical shopping street in Napier. Also, we have found the very first Starbucks in New Zealand. We're now approaching the port of Tauranga, located in Mount Maunganui. Well, here we are, Sunday morning, 10 o'clock, and that is the mountain I will be walking to the top of as soon as we dock in about an hour. It's the only activity to do at this first port here is to go to the top of that mountain, 1,000 feet above water level. We'll see how difficult a climb it is.
This is Mount Maunganui.
This is from someone from Melbourne, Australia. They speak Maori.
No, not quite, but this is Mount Maunganui here.
Path starts deceptively easy. Trail is steep. The trail is getting so much steeper. And this is as high as I'm going to get to the view of the entrance to the channel. Failed to reach the top. I got to the tree line and I got to the saddle, but the steepness right there stopped me. And that brings our stop at Tauranga, our mount, still can't say the word, to an end. Next stop, Auckland, New Zealand. Monday, January the 16th, we are approaching Auckland, New Zealand and there in the distance is downtown Auckland. As we are being tugged out of port by the boat, the pilot boat, it brings to an end a sunny and warm day in Auckland, New Zealand. Leaving the city of Auckland and heading to Sydney across the Tasman Sea. It might be a good time to bring this 15-day cruise from Melbourne to Sydney to a close.